Welcome back to another video. If you're new here, my name is Megan and I am an agent in honor. It finally happened and I am so beyond thrilled. First, I want to say before I get into any of this is not a video about how to land an agent. This is purely about my experience getting an agent. That's important. I cannot stand it when authors sign with agents and then immediately become experts on how to land an agent. It just doesn't work like that, in my opinion, for two main reasons. One, I don't think agents are yanking our chains when they say that this industry is very subjective. I'll come back to this later. And two, I fully believe that luck and timing play some role in this, even if it's small. So I'm not here to give you advice. If you learn something new, great. I will share things that I did differently or spent time improving this time around. I can't prove that they made a difference, but I feel like they did. First, I want to give you some context. This was in no way an overnight win for me. I wrote my first book about 15 years ago. In that time, I've written roughly 9. And I say roughly because I have lost track. I know for sure that I've counted before and I've gotten 10 books, but for the sake of this video, we'll just say I've written approximately 9. My goal from the beginning was always to get a literary agent and be traditionally published. I did explore self-publishing at one point. Long story short, I just didn't love it for a number of reasons. I don't think self-publishing is bad, it's just not for me. Something I can acknowledge now looking back is that while I always took this seriously because I've always wanted to write books for a living, for those first several years, I know now that there was so much I didn't know. Those earlier books probably didn't stand a chance. I would say that it was only until maybe the last 3 or 4 books I wrote that my work started to have real potential. I don't regret any of it. It was necessary because I learned a lot. I'm not going to discuss any of those earlier books because they were so rough. I will say that over the years, I've written in different genres and I've read in different genres, which proved to be immensely helpful. I explored, I challenged myself, and you just never know what you're going to love and be good at, so I'm really glad that I kept an open mind. I will quickly recap the last 3 manuscripts because this is where I think things started to shift. I wrote an adult paranormal horror, an adult fantasy romance, and most recently an adult rom-com, romantic comedy. The paranormal horror didn't gain much traction, and I go into more detail on this in other videos, so I won't rehash all of that here, but in a nutshell, I had paused around 35 queries because I was getting rejected so fast, and I thought something has to be wrong here. So I worked with 2 editors who are also agents on my query package. I incorporated those revisions, and then I got my first full request. An agent asked for the full manuscript. So the changes that the editors suggested helped. While I was querying that book, I wrote the romantasy, and then I got a developmental edit. That editor said it would take her about a month. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to take a full month off from writing. I'll keep querying the paranormal horror and I'll just read. I'll go back to enjoying being a reader. That didn't happen. I love writing too much to stay away. That was how I ended up writing a rom-com. Start to finish, this book took me about a month, which is a record for me. I don't normally write that quickly, but I had so much fun writing it, and I think it also had something to do with the fact that I wrote it on the heels of a fantasy romance, which was very challenging. I knew I wanted to write something lighter with no magic system set in the present day. I think that played a role in how quickly I wrote this. I purely wanted to have fun, and I did. I had so much fun. I get the fantasy back from the editor, and I do another round of revisions, and then I suddenly have 3 manuscripts that are ready to query. I liked working on multiple books at once. Querying multiple books at once, I don't recommend it. It's a lot to juggle because you can't query one agent or agency with multiple projects. Most of them don't allow that. So I had to be very careful that none of my queries across those 3 books were overlapping. This wasn't intentional. I didn't plan to have 3 books ready to query at the same time. I ended up pumping the brakes on the paranormal horror. It wasn't really going anywhere, and importantly, I had a really, really good feeling about my rom-com. I knew it was something special, and I was very confident in it. This was the most confident I've ever been in my writing, as a matter of fact. I did send a few queries for the romantasy, but knowing how competitive that genre is, even more competitive than all of this already is, I said to my husband several times actually, I was like, I feel like my best bet is to query the rom-com and try to get an agent with that manuscript who will also be open to looking at my fantasy. I felt really, really good about the rom-com. So I focused mostly on that. But what was different this time was because I was so sure this book was something special, I didn't query as aggressively as I have in the past. I'm going to talk about mindset more later, but my attitude with the rom-com wasn't, God, I hope somebody wants this. It was, it's only a matter of time until an agent grabs this. This is very unlike me. I started querying this book on September 1st. My 5th query got me a request for the full manuscript. After that, over several weeks, there were, I believe, 4 or 5 more requests for the manuscript. These were the best results I've ever gotten and the fastest. When I got the first pass on the full, I cried because I felt like I had gotten so close. And she said she couldn't quite put her finger on what to do to fix it. That's what the agent said, which meant that she wasn't open to a revise and resubmit, which is where an agent gives you feedback, you revise the manuscript, and then you send it back to them for them to reconsider. I was so sad, but I moved on. I kept querying, and I kept querying with the same, I almost want to say leisurely attitude. After that rejection, the self-doubt did start creeping in, but I did an okay job shushing it. And like I said, I kept getting requests, so I still felt okay, all in all. I only query agents that I can really picture myself working with, and one of the agents I queried, I reached out to her, among other reasons, because on her manuscript wish list, almost everything she said she wanted is stuff I've written or want to write. There was really good alignment there, and I remember finding her and going, oh, cool, like we have a lot in common. And I queried her. She responded within, I think it was a half hour, and asked for the full, and she seemed really excited about it. So I sent her the manuscript. After a few days, she followed up and turned me down. She said that she loved the plot, but it wasn't her flavor of humor, but I wish you luck, and so on, and that was the end of it. This was over email, not Query Tracker, so the query wasn't closed. Usually in Query Tracker, once an agent passes, they close the query and you can't contact them again, but again, this was an email. And I thought, well, what the hell? If it's a no, I might as well try. So I followed up and I told her, look, I'm open to making revisions if you're open, so I'd like to try again and resubmit it. She writes back and she's like, oh, well, in that case. So we exchange a few emails and talk about, what might need to change. And I'm like, great, no problem. I'll get to work and I'll get this back to you ASAP. She emails again and she's like, well, wait, before you do that, let's hop on a revision call so that you don't do any unnecessary work. Even better. We get on that call, I think it was the next week, the revision call. And she says, I read it again, and this is actually an offer call, not a revision call. When I tell you that I internally died a little bit, I struggled to play it cool, and honestly, I probably didn't. I was very... She had so many positive things to say about the rom-com, along with ideas to make it even stronger, and it just went so well. We had great chemistry. She was easy to talk to. I mentioned my romantasy, and she was like, yeah, we can look at that too, and here we are. So now it's official. I signed the contract, and it's a done deal. I am so happy, so grateful, so excited for the future, and I just want to rocket to the moon with my agent and do amazing things. I'm so stoked. Besides giving you an update, there are a few other things I want to touch on. Earlier, I mentioned that I believe agents are being very truthful when they say that this industry is subjective. Off and on, I wondered if this was something that they said just to gently let us down. But I learned over the last year or so, it really is that subjective. With the rom-com, for example, one agent passed because she didn't love the pacing. One didn't like that it had swearing in it, which I could easily remove, but anyway. One said that he liked it, but it was just far enough outside his lane that he didn't feel like the right agent for me. The changes my agent mentioned wanting to see were different from the things that I heard from all those other agents. She also mentioned things she liked about it that were very specific and unique that other agents might not have noticed or cared about. All of this is to say that I do believe you can send the same manuscript to 10 agents and get 10 completely different opinions. We can choose to look at this as frustrating, or we could choose to see it as an opportunity. One agent might hate it, another could easily love it. I want to share a few things I've worked on more recently, things that I think I did differently with this book that I think helped me. As I said, my mindset with this manuscript was very different. I was calmer and slower with querying. I would send 1 to 3 queries a day, normally 1, and then I would let it go. Even if this didn't contribute to the offer that I got, even if you believe that mindset doesn't matter, which personally I do, it certainly felt a lot nicer than desperately sending queries and stressing and refreshing my inbox and refreshing Query Tracker, agonizing over everything. Like, I will take this approach any day of the week. And let me be clear, I have been rejected hundreds of times at this point. Sometimes I'm able to let the rejection go very quickly. Other times it hurts really bad. It really wears on you. But the last couple of manuscripts, I just told myself, I'm going to be writing no matter what because I love it. So if this manuscript doesn't make it, maybe it'll be the next one. Something else that was interesting, I can be the most positive person in the world, but I realized that I was still saying and thinking on a regular basis, I know it'll happen for me, but this industry is so competitive. I know it'll happen, but it's so saturated. I know it'll work out, but. It was always positivity with fear latched on at the end. I start most mornings with either meditation or affirmations or something like that just to set the mood for the day. And recently I started writing affirmations in my journal that were entirely focused on how easy this is, how easy it is to get an agent, and how it's already done. I already did it. I've already accomplished it. I started journaling those affirmations and got an offer 3 days later. Again, if nothing else, it felt good to be less fearful, but could that have played a role in the results that I got? Maybe. Something else I did differently, I was very picky with who I queried. Now, I've always been targeted in my queries, but with the rom-com, I got even more laser focused. I especially utilized Publishers Marketplace to find recent deals for books like my own, and I tracked down those agents to query. Another thing, and I actually did this before and after writing the manuscript, I used both Publishers Marketplace, mostly Publishers Marketplace, but also Amazon. I've talked about comps before, like in this video, but anyhow, I spent hours researching comps for this book, both to help me understand what readers of this niche like and to understand what currently sells. So I did this before and after writing. Looking back, I think this was very important. And I didn't only search for rom-coms or romantic comedies. I also searched other keywords relevant to my book, like Denver. My story takes place in Denver. Coffee. My male protagonist owns a chain of coffee shops. It's a bit of trial and error because it doesn't always really work, but I unearthed so much helpful information and I learned a lot about this segment of the market. Why ultimately did this work out? I first queried my agent with my letter and first 3 chapters. She wrote back about a half hour later asking for the full. So we can assume it was a strong query letter and strong opening pages. And also, I believe it was just a concept she really liked. She was the right agent for me. The perfect query letter wouldn't have mattered with weak opening pages. A perfect query letter and killer opening pages wouldn't have mattered if I queried an agent who I knew just wasn't interested in my type of book. So I feel like it all matters. Everything plays a role. I don't think there's any magic trick. I think that there are several variables, several factors, and this time with this book and this agent, they all came together exactly as they needed to. All the stars aligned. I'm so glad I followed up with her. If I hadn't followed up after she initially passed, that would have been the end of it. It's crazy. We are sometimes one decision away from either progressing to the next step or not. Looking back, I was talking to my husband about this. I feel like over the years, as I've pursued this, every step has been about trying to increase my odds even a little bit. And maybe that's what this is, what a lot of things are in life, really. Just trying to increase your odds. Every time I sent a query letter, I increased my odds. With every new manuscript I wrote, I increased my odds. It's about constantly fine-tuning your approach and dialing it in. The irony that the book I wrote in 1 month just to have fun while I was waiting to get my fantasy edits back, the fact that that's the book that did it, go figure. I know that getting an agent doesn't guarantee success, but this is such a huge step forward for me. I've enjoyed every moment. I've celebrated every moment of this. So, I'm just so happy and super proud of myself, and I'm so glad that I never gave up. and I can't wait to see what comes next. I think amazing things are around the corner, and I'm happy that I can now move past querying and progress to the next step. I officially canceled my query tracker subscription, which felt really nice. If you are still querying, and again, this is not advice, it's just support, it's encouragement. I know that it's really easy to get online, especially on like X and TikTok, and you see all these people landing agents, and it's very easy to feel like it's happening for everyone but you, and it's happening very quickly for everyone but you. I guarantee that that's not how it's working. That's not how it's working for the majority. I think the majority of us are querying for longer than any of us realize. It really is not uncommon to have to write multiple manuscripts before you get an agent, because this isn't easy. So why would it be a slam dunk on your first attempt? Not to mention the fact that what it takes to write a good manuscript is very different from what it takes to write a good query letter, from what it takes to write a good synopsis. There are multiple things you have to learn, not just how to write a good book. You also have to learn how to pitch and sell and package that book. Those are very different skill sets, in my opinion. Looking back, like I said a moment ago, I feel like all of this is about increasing your odds. So if I were to go back and do this all over again, what would I do to increase my odds sooner? What were my biggest lessons here? I would say taking comps more seriously, researching comps more, again, both before and after I write a book. That helped me learn a lot about the markets, and it helped me learn a lot about readers. And that's crucial if you want to be traditionally published. And even if you're an indie author, if you want to sell books, you have to know about the market. I would have done that sooner. I also would have learned more about the importance of query letters, and especially sample pages, those first few pages. One thing I learned from working with the 2 editors I worked with, the sample pages, it's saying that they're important is an understatement. I think that there are very specific things that agents are probably looking for in those opening pages. And when I learned with my paranormal horror, which again, I talk about this in another video, when I learned that in my paranormal horror, not only was there a huge problem in my opening pages, but there was a huge problem in my query, and that's probably why I was getting rejected so fast. The instant I fixed that, my results changed. The rejections slowed down, and I got that first full request. Something else I learned, if you have the means to invest, getting an editor, especially an editor who's also an agent, to go through your query package, which would be, it's not always like this, but a query package often contains your query letter and synopsis, and then some agents will include the first few pages or like the first chapter. Some will charge extra for that. If you have the means to do that, especially with an editor that's an agent that knows what it takes, that to me was a huge game changer. I just did a video on debating whether or not you need an editor. I know some people will say, it's not necessary. No, it's not necessary. You don't have to do it. Did it help me tremendously? Yes. Did I learn a lot? Yes. And I told the editors I worked with, I didn't work with either of them on the rom-com. Again, go figure. But I learned things from them, from working with them in the past, that I applied to this query letter and to my opening pages. And I think that's one of those many variables I mentioned that helped me and made a difference and made my work stronger. So if you have the capacity to have an editor agent look over your query package and your first few chapters, I think it's worth the investment. And by the way, there are agents out there charging like $15 for this. So there's the price range is wide. There might be someone out there you can afford if you're budget conscious, like I certainly am. What else? I think reading and writing in different genres helped. I think focusing on having fun. I know a lot of people will roll their eyes when I talk about mindset, but I've been a big believer in this stuff for a long time. So to me, it's like a given that your mindset plays a huge role. I was so casual about this, which I never have been before. Every book I've written and queried in the past, it was like this desperate, this one has to work, it has to work, it has to work. And I was just in a constant state of stress and fear because what if it doesn't work? With the rom-com, because I went into that just wanting to have fun, and I did, like I was working on that book and I'd be laughing and laughing. I think I'm hilarious. Hopefully other people will too. But I think that going into that with such a completely different mindset and having so much fun and not really worrying too much even when the rejection started coming in. Easier said than done, I know. But trying to keep the fear to a minimum, trying to quiet those like voices in my head telling me, well, what if it doesn't work? I do believe that helped. I think that's it for today. I hope I was true to my commitment not to give you advice. I hope you got something out of this. And again, if you learned something new that you want to try, great. If nothing else, I hope you walk away from this video encouraged and excited, and maybe, go a little easier on yourself if you've been feeling down lately or discouraged. I hope you like this video. As always, drop me a comment, say hello. I love hearing from you. I don't want to try to give anyone advice, but I will always give encouragement. So if you're feeling discouraged and you need a little boost, drop me a comment so I can cheer you on. And keep going. I believe in you. Bye.